Hey, this is Michelle, and you're listening to Words with Michelle, the podcast, a show where I sit down and have conversations with influencers on a range of topics, anything from natural hair, employment, discrimination, food, relationships, and everything in between. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. If you want to send me an email, hit me up at michelle@wordsmichelle.com. This episode is sponsored by Be Housewife Premium Paint by Number Kits. They are a great way to unwind, be creative, and bring beauty into your space. You can get a kit at behousewife.etsy.com or behousewife.com. Be sure to use the promo code MAMA2025 before Mother's Day for $5 towards a premium paint kit. Happy painting! Welcome back to Words with Michelle, the podcast where we spotlight inspiring Black Canadian changemakers. I'm your host, Michelle, and today's episode is all about love, legacy, and literature. I'm honored to be joined by Rita and Sam Burke, a powerhouse husband and wife duo, children's authors, and founders of Burke'S Books, a historic store being one of the first Black bookstores in Toronto. It was more than just a bookstore. Burke's Books and picture framing became a beloved cultural hub, a gathering place for creativity, conversation, and community within the Black Canadian art scene. Rita and Sam have dedicated their lives to building spaces where Black voices are heard, stories are celebrated, and young readers see themselves reflected in the pages. In this episode, we talk about how they turn their passion into purpose, the stories that shape them, and how community continues to fuel their mission. Trust me, this is a conversation full of wisdom, history, warmth, and inspiration. Let's get into it. I start off the episode asking Rita and Sam to introduce themselves. Thanks for being on the show.
Well, I am Rita Burke, born in Guyana, did a little bit of teaching in Guyana, left many moons ago, went to England, studied nursing, where I met Sam. We came to Canada in the early 70s, where I nursed, had my children, moved to Peterborough as a nursing educator, and here you are, started Burke's Bookstore in 1994, and here we are now. We've become children's authors, and we are writing and publishing books. That's me in a nutshell.
Yeah, nice. And Mr. Sam, do you want to say a bit about yourself?
Well, my name is Sam Burke, and I was born in Jamaica, left Jamaica at an early age, went to England, grew up in England, and somehow Providence made it so that Rita and I came together. And we uh, found ourselves in Canada, and we just been partners in crime since then. Good crime, of course, good crime. And we uh, been going and doing and being, and that's how we've done it all these years. And here we are.
So the reason why you're on the podcast today is to talk a bit about, your writing, your books, but also you did mention Burke's Books. And remember when we met each other at Word on the Street, I remember, and you were saying you had Burke's Books, and I remember Burke's Books because it was just like everyone should remember Burke's Books. It was a huge part of, I think, history. So I kind of wanted you guys to talk about that just a bit, like why you opened it, how long it was open for, because I remember hearing commercials. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I think I remember hearing commercials on Flow back in the day. Am I correct? So if you just want to speak about why you decided to open the bookstore, how long it went for, and some of the some of the highlights of the bookstore.
Well, As I said earlier, Michelle,
Hmm.
that I was in healthcare. That was my profession initially.
Hmm.
And then I left that and went back to York University full time as a student. And I was studying Caribbean and African studies and sociology. And I was introduced to the most amazing books, books that taught me about my heritage, my history, my family. And I was so excited about that that I thought one day, after I graduate from this place, I will have a bookstore. And I've always been interested in books. And so Burke's books and picture framing evolved out of that going to York University, where I saw black books, books about black people, black books about our history, books teaching us who we were and where we came from. And I thought that would be a good thing to introduce to our community, and hence works, books and picture framing, because people brought their artwork in, and Sam was the master framer and framed people's artwork as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because this is why I think that I know you guys. Well, I know of you because my Uncle Frank brought me to the store back in the day, and I know it was for framing. So that's why this connection is really freaked me out because I'm like, when you said your name, Burks, I'm like, I know this store. I've been in that store, but I wasn't in it a long, long time ago. So thank you. Thank you for having the store. And thank you for sharing with me why you decided to have the bookstore. It's like I said, it's to me, it's an institution. It's so ingrained in my head, the commercials. So to me, it's a huge part of where people will go and get books about our culture. You know what I mean? So thank you for that. Sam adds some info and answers why they opened the store.
I loved books. Since a child, I loved books. And as a youngster, there were certain books that I read that really had a profound impact on me. Arthur Ashe, writing about his life in the States during the struggles. Uh, Mafabeni, writing about South Africa, Kaffir Boy, and that. And those those books really they did something for me. Now, as Rita's mentioned, she was doing in healthcare. I was also in education. I was a guidance counselor for many years. And at the end of the day, ever so often, Rita kept saying, I like to have a bookstore and I like to just sit and write books. And she would not stop. There was no reason for her to be saying that because we had our careers and we were just going along beautifully. And but she just wouldn't stop. And so I thought, well, if that's what she wants to do, maybe it could be done. So we started to put life to the thought. But then I said to her, I said, well, if you're going to sit and write books, what about the time when no one comes in to buy a book? Then what? What happens? And so at that time, I thought, well, why don't we put something with the books? Art. They just seemed to go together. It was so natural. So again, because I loved art, I'm not an artist myself, but I love art. And so we just started to put things together, and little by little, we started doing research and doing things until it came about. So when we made that leap, 93, 94, it was just so organic. It was beautiful. It was lovely. It was timely. We just kept going from there.
What was the response like with the bookstore at first? Like when you opened it, what was the response?
I was amazed, pleased, excited, warmed by the response. Now, we were not the first black bookstore in the city. There was Third World Bookstore.
That's really
And
yeah.
so we knew Lenny and Gwen Johnson, and they supported us to some degree and helped us to move along. But in the community, people were really gracious and kind. I like to say that we opened a black bookstore. My expectations were that it would be black folks coming in, but by the time we were done, it was, I would say, half and half blacks and half of everybody else that came in, not just to buy a book, but to get framing done. And so we were a community entity on Sinclair Avenue.
Yeah, and that's how I see it. That is how I see it. So that was a perfect description of the store. Because how long did the shop run for? The store run for?
Well, just go back just a shade.
Hmm.
The beauty of opening the store
Hmm.
is that Rita and I were up front. We were the ones at the front, if you will. But really, it was a community effort. At that time, you couldn't just walk into a distributor and get black books as such.
Okay.
Our books came from the States primarily. And even though we went to the States to get our books, it was community members, many of them are still around, who would go to New York and to bring our orders back for us
Okay.
so that we could stock the shelves with books. And so we were at the front, but really it was the community members behind us who were push us along, who were spreading the word about this place, on St. Clair, where we could have events, open mics once a month, children's programs, etc. So even though we were there, as I said, it was so much more than just, there was a pride. People had a certain pride to come in and to support us. And the more they did that, it's the more impetus it gave us to do what we wanted to do or what we loved doing.
I wanted to know why the store closed and what led to that.
Different things with the line on St. Clair, the
Yep.
street line going through,
Yeah.
a little bit of mobility challenge for myself, and a couple of other factors. It was time to make the transition. So at that time, we decided to transition from the physical space in the bookstore to the online business. And here we
That
are.
was about 2008.
Oh,
About
2008. Okay,
yeah,
great. Okay, cool. So there is an online presence now. So is Burke?
absolutely.
Oh, okay,
We
nice.
ain't going nowhere.
That's good. How is it writing together? Like, so do you both write books together?
Do you know what? In 2020, my dear Michelle,
Hmm.
my dearly beloved brought me a manuscript that he had written, I think, since about 2015 or 2006. I don't quite remember. It was a children's story that I didn't even know he had written, and shelved it. And then because we had so much time with the pandemic, he brought it out, and I said, "That's wonderful. Let's work with it." And our first book, I Like Being Me, was born out of that transcript that he had written eons ago and shelved. We sold adult books in our store. We sold children's books as well. And at that time, many of the books that we sold were written by American authors. Today, what we see in Toronto, in Ontario, in Canada is a different story because we've got lots and lots and lots of authors now. But you could count them on your hands in those days, how many people there were. But not only did we sell books, but we hosted, as Sam said, open mics. I think ours was the first open mic in the city where we encouraged poets to come and just tell their stories and talk their stuff. We had book launches from very, very important Canadian and American authors. We launched their books. We had readings, all kinds of creative things occurred in that store. And the writing part of it, as I said, Sam would come with a story and say, "What do you think?" And together we would sit down and polish and hone and bring it up to snuff. Or I may come up with a story and I would say, "Okay, this is what our next book is going to be about." And we just put ourselves together, our minds and our hearts and our souls together, and come up with a story. So, right now, as I said before, our first book, which I call our signature piece, is called I Like Being Me. And the second book is, I think, a beautiful story about Mazin, Mazin, an 8-year old who's making cupcakes with his dad, and they're having a beautiful time in the kitchen, singing and dancing and beating the drum and making funny noises as they make scrumptious, delicious cupcakes. So that was our second book. And our third book is about a middle school girl, Shaniza, and we select our names. We handpick our names for our children in those books, who is going to, she's going to the school in Toronto, just by the Toronto West, St. Clair West subway station. And for the first time, she hears the word Kwanzaa. She never knew about it before, never heard about it. And she became so excited about this. And she was a very curious person, wanting to learn, and set out to learn all she could about Kwanzaa.
In terms of the writing, it really is something that comes from inside of us. It's who we are. It's what we're about. It's not just some words on a piece of paper. And so, again, our first book is I Like Being Me. And that came out of the fact that I am who I am. We are who we are. And so it's an expression. And if I may, I would just like to read what the first part of it says, whether you're an adult or a child or whatever. And the first page, if you will, goes like this. I like being me. I like being me. I like to hug myself and feel the strength that comes from deep inside of me. And it continues on through. And what that says is we as melanated people in this society ought not to apologize or feel that we are less than. Again, it doesn't matter if you're 2 or 92. I like being me. I like being me. And so it's an affirmation of self. So that's what the book is, an expression. Just like an author, when they go to a page and they put their story, and everybody has a story to tell. And when, as I said, I went to England when I was a young child. Rita went when she was an older, a little bit older, when she went to England. But the experiences has shaped us and has allowed us to have this expression. You can buckle to what's going on to around you, or you can say, hey, you know something? Doesn't matter what you say or do. I like being me. I like being me. And that's what it is.
But as Sam described, I Like Being Me, I want to give him credit for coming up with the idea because he'd written it a while back. Of course, we had to do a lot of work on it, but he had the original manuscript that I didn't even know that he was writing, and we worked on it to bring it to this point. And it's a book that I refer to as an extended affirmation. And even though it's a picture book, and picture books you tend to associate with children, I believe that adults would benefit because sometimes there are situations in our lives where we have doubt about who we are and whether we like ourselves or not.
Mm.
And so this is an extended affirmation to remind people, as Sam said, that it's critical if we're going to ground ourselves, if we're going to grow, if we're going to evolve, if we're going to actualize and feel good about who we are. We need to keep reminding ourselves ever so often it's okay to like who you are.
I like that idea. I really do. That is good for adults because we all need it. Because we all, sometimes, and I speak for myself, like, sometimes you just wonder, like, am I doing the right thing? Am I good enough? We sometimes wonder about that. I think being an artist, being creative, whatever, you constantly, I mean, I speak for myself. You think, oh my God, am I doing the right thing? Is this good? Will they like it? So yeah, I would love something like that. I'll have to check out your book and get as much insight as possible from your book. So thanks for sharing that. Um,
I want Sam to continue telling the story about Shaniza and Kwanzaa because I think it's a very endearing, powerful, wonderful introduction to Toronto because it's set in Toronto in an elementary school, in a middle school, and I believe it's the one of the only Kwanzaa books that's written in Canada or set in Canada.
All the stories that we tell is to do with education because that's been our lives, right? The schools and learning and all of that. So in writing the Kwanzaa book, it was almost a going back and learning, right? So here's this little girl who knew nothing about Kwanzaa. Her teacher brings it up about having this thing, and she has volunteered to learn something about it, but she's challenged. Where am I going to get this information from? However, when she turned to her grandfather or grandparents, they were able to fill in something for her. Maybe those parents might be us. I don't know. It's in theory in the book, right? So in doing that, she learned a lot about Kwanzaa. They were able to put on this uh, Kwanzaa Assembly School, and as a result, the school was enriched by that, and by extension, the community was enriched because the community saw what happened in school, wanted to replicate it, and so it's almost like us having fun telling the story of Kwanzaa. And of course, when we had the bookstore, we would go to local schools and to have displays and to be a part of their Kwanzaa celebrations, etc., etc. So it's almost like us having like two little kids having fun with all of this writing and things like that.
can you name a few things that have happened in the bookstore? Like you said, there were book signings, and was there anything that that's really memorable to you?
On December 27th, consistently every year, we would have a Kwanzaa celebration and invite people into the store. So we would go through teaching them what Kwanzaa was. So we did that many, many years. As a matter of fact, I ran into someone recently who said to me, the first time I heard about Kwanzaa was at your store. I came to one of your celebration. I was mesmerized and amazed by that. Person said, first time I heard about it, I came into your, and I didn't even know the person. And we, as I said, we had many authors come sign their books or launch their books. The person I think about more than anything else, and I don't want this to sound as if I'm name dropping,
Yeah,
Dion Brand is a well known Canadian author. And
right.
she has a children's book, it's a poetry book. And I don't remember the name, it's on my shelf somewhere. She launched that book at her store way back in the early 2000s.
Oh,
The
okay.
man who curated Kwanzaa, Dr. Karenga, he came up with the whole concept and researched it and wrote the book and introduced it to the world. He came into our store and signed his Kwanzaa book during
Wow.
one of our Kwanzaa celebrations. Olive Senior is a well known author, prolific author of Jamaican heritage who has lived in Canada for many years. She's been into our store, signing her book, reading. The famous Austin Clarke, when he
Mm,
wrote breadfruit and pigtails, he came and was on a panel in our store talking about his works. So we have had the privilege, the honor of hosting many Canadian, not just Ontario, Canadian authors who came into our store because it was the place for people to meet to show off their creativity. Yes. Yeah, it wasn't just a bookstore or framing store. It was a community space. Was a hub. People would just drop in to have a conversation.
We've got a beautiful, vibrant community here in Toronto. And I am just so privileged to be a part of it.
In addition to writing, you're also publishers. Tell me a bit about that.
We have done our own books, so we're a bona fide, legitimate publishing house, as well as we are authors.
So you are a publishing company, so you publish your own books?
We have published for other people. And
Nice.
our last project was or is a book called Reflections on Sisterhood, Voices from Black Canada. And I am so proud of that book. There are 9 Black women from Toronto who each wrote a chapter in that book. And the theme, of course, is sisterhood, but each person took a completely different perspective on sisterhood. And we were able to launch that book 2 Saturdays ago, and the launch was beyond my expectation. It was absolutely successful in terms of the numbers of people who showed up, in terms of the book sale, in terms of the ambience and the connections and the networking that transpired that day. It was absolutely heartwarming. So that was our last project. We're working on a number of other projects right now for publishing purposes. So
Okay.
yes, that part of who we are is for me very exciting, heartwarming that we can take something from point A and walk it through the steps to point Z. And I'm happy with that.
So let's get into the podcasting. How did you make your way into podcasting, Rita? How'd that happen?
Well,
And it sounds
pod-
interesting.
podcasting. I often felt because of my experience at Burke's Books and Picture Framing, we had the good fortune of meeting a lot of people that we consider to be community builders, people who did something to make our community what it is, people who have broken down walls and doors and jump hurdles to get younger people where they are today in their fancy jobs and education and what have you. And I've always wanted to talk to some of those people. And I spoke with a friend of mine who's, you can say she's a coach, and said, I want to do this, but I don't have the equipment and the appliances to do it. And she said, just take your phone out and interview people. But that didn't make sense for me. And
Mhm.
then, as you know, the co host of Speak Up International, who's
Mhm.
Elton and I are both, and Sam are Toastmasters. And Elton approached me and said, how about if we did a podcast together? And so it was like the skies opening up, and everything we were dreaming of was falling out of the skies. And so we decided, yes, we were going to interview community builders, people who have enriched our community, and talk to them about their stories so that we would be able to archive in their own voices what they have done in our community. Hence the podcast. And Sam is, as I said, Sam is our cheerleader. And every time I'm done an interview, I run to him and say, guess what? Guess what? That was great. That was wonderful.
Just to tie the community part of it again, here's another example. When we were doing the store, we were busy. I think that's an understatement, really. We were busy running the store. But we were Toastmasters previous to that. There's a young woman in the community whose name is, I will call her name, Michelle Hughes. She was also into public speaking. And And we talked about, because the space was there, where we did things. And we kept talking about having a Toastmasters club. And she was saying, Mr. Burke, we've got to get this going. He said, Michelle, I'm busy. Leave me alone, please. And she said, no, we got to get this going. And she kept on. And then, dare I say, we gave in. And so we opened the Ebony Toastmasters, and we agreed to do it with 7 individuals. And we formed a club. We incorporated, and we just kept going. Michelle, unfortunately, has passed on. But it was her persistence, that community connection, that bulldog type of a tenacity. She wouldn't give up. And for over 20 years now, every Monday night, except for holidays, we meet Ebony Toastmasters. And there have been hundreds of members who've gone through. We've won competitions at different levels in the province of Ontario, etc. And we are still going and loving it, etc.
So you guys
That's
are doing, oh, sorry. You guys are still doing Ebony Toast, because I remember hearing of Ebony Toastmasters. You guys are still doing this?
Oh, certainly.
over
Started in 205. Started in 205. We meet every Monday night at 7 o'clock online, and we're having just a ball. And you should watch the young people come there who could hardly stand and say their own names. Give them 3, 4 months, and they are just waxing and waning stories. It's truly, truly, truly amazing. Yes. So that's something else that we did at Burke's Bookstore. But since COVID, we have transitioned to online, and there are times when we still meet in person. But Ebony Toastmasters was the brainchild of Burke's Bookstore and Michelle Hughes, who, as Sam said, has passed away.
So you guys do everything. Like, oh my God, like you guys don't slow down. You guys are just in everything, aren't
That
you?
is true. That is true. But we've lived long enough to have done a lot of things. Not
Yeah.
because we're brilliant or anything like that, but we've lived long enough. And when you live long enough, Michelle, you get to do lots of things, especially if you're curious.
I think you guys are very curious. You guys are curious and just I think community is probably what just propels you, right? I think it's just the sense of community and sharing. I think that's what it is. It's sharing. You like to share things, information. That's why people are drawn to you, right?
But I'll tell you, talking about community, there was a woman who would come into the store every month to buy one magazine just to support us. She'd come in every month, and there was a guy that would come and buy a card. We sold greetings cards as well, like birthday cards, and there was a man that would come and buy at least one card. And I think what the message they were sending is, we want you guys to do well because you're a community. It was the Oprah magazine. This woman would come every month and made sure she got one. It was heartwarming to see that. So we've now transitioned to our online store, which is called I Like Being Me Books.
Ah, okay. Thank you for telling us with the I was going to ask you about for the URL, so thank you for that.
Yes,
Okay,
it's
good.
I Like Being Me Books. And we are having a whale of a time, an exciting time. People are approaching us and saying, can you help us publish our book? People are literally approaching us and saying, I have a manuscript. I don't know where to go next. Could you please help?
It felt like a trip down memory lane, as well as a history lesson. Rita and Sam were one of the first black bookstores and left a huge impression on me and Toronto. Thanks for sitting with me. Like again, it's been a pleasure speaking with you guys. Thank you for sharing, your history with me and the listeners. So, thanks a lot, and we
It
will.
certainly is an honor to talk with you because you are an up and coming community builder and you're doing an amazing job with your podcast and your blog. So I certainly appreciate this opportunity.
Oh, that means a lot. I mean, honestly, because you guys are esteemed. Like, I mean, you guys are esteemed people. So it's like that means a lot. And I'm really happy that we met. You're beautiful people. Like I can feel you're very generous. So I want to say thank you for like, just our conversations that we've had and just meeting you.
And all we're trying to do is to do the best that we can with what we have for as long as we can.
to make a
And
contribution to the community.
You definitely have. You definitely have. And still do, right? So that's a good thing.
So walk good, Michelle.
Okay, I will. I'll try. I will try to
thank
walk
you
good.
so
Thank you.
much. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. I'd love to hear from you. Send me a message or share your thoughts on social media on my Instagram page at WordsWMichelle, on TikTok at Words with Michelle, and my YouTube channel at Words with Michelle. And don't forget to subscribe and leave a message on Spotify and Apple Podcasts so more listeners can find the show. Until next time, bye.